When your city loses power for 72 hours, the darkness isn't your biggest threat. The real danger is the chain reaction that follows. Systems fail in layers. First the lights, then the water pressure, then the digital payment grid, and finally, people. You'll hear the silence settle in, heavy and unnatural, as the city shifts from order to instinct. What used to be a convenience-based society becomes a resource-driven battlefield. In that battlefield, hesitation is a liability. Preparation is the only shield you have. You need to understand one rule. In a prolonged blackout, you are no longer a resident. You are an asset. Others will evaluate you based on what you have or what they think you have. Desperation rewires people fast. Support systems crumble. Emergency services overload. Neighbors stop being predictable. If you aren't ready, you will be absorbed into the chaos before you realize it. This is why ordinary items, simple, everyday objects you ignore during normal life, suddenly become strategic resources. Water becomes leverage. Light becomes a signal. Heat becomes a reveal. Information becomes a weapon. And cash becomes influence. 8 items. Nothing fancy. Nothing dramatic. But each one shifts the balance of power in your favor when the grid goes dark and the city's survival clock starts ticking. You're here because you understand that survival isn't about fear. It's about control, precision, quiet readiness. When the blackout hits, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall back to the level of your preparation. And these 8 items will decide which side of the collapse you stand on. 72 hours. That's the threshold where an urban environment stops functioning and starts decaying. The first 12 hours feel manageable. People still assume power will return. They wait. They complain. They refresh their phones even when they know the battery is draining for nothing. But beneath that false calm, pressure builds. Every hour without electricity pulls another brick out of the city's foundation. Water systems lose pressure. Pumps stall. What comes out of the tap slows to a trickle, then to nothing. Refrigerators die, and food safety collapses on a household level. Traffic lights fail, turning intersections into silent battlegrounds of frustration. Digital payments choke first. ATMs shut down. Card readers stop responding. The world goes analog, and most people don't know how to operate in that world anymore. By hour 24, discomfort becomes awareness. People realize the system isn't bouncing back quickly. They walk hallways with flashlights. They start asking questions. They start watching each other. Supermarkets crowd, shelves shrink, tempers shorten. The city begins to show its teeth. By hour 48, patience collapses. Tension replaces routine. Supermarkets that once felt safe become pressure chambers. Lines dissolve into shoving. Managers lose control. Alarms no longer work. Police presence thins as resources stretch. The sound you hear most is not shouting. It's silence. The silence of people observing, calculating, considering what they're willing to do to secure the things they need. By hour 72, the transformation is complete. The city becomes a grid of dark corridors, unpredictable movements, and opportunistic behavior. People who didn't prepare are now in survival mode, and survival mode rarely brings out rational decisions. You must not be part of that crowd. You must not be within their line of need. The only safe place is outside the desperation curve, positioned with what you need and the discipline to protect it. This is why the next 8 items matter. They are your stabilizers when the urban system collapses, your edge when the city slips into its primal state. Your first priority in a 72-hour blackout is not visibility, it's invisibility. Light is the fastest way to expose your position, your resources, and your level of preparedness. When the grid dies, the darkness becomes uniform, deep, heavy, and absolute. Any light you produce becomes a beacon, and beacons attract attention, curiosity at first, desperation later, threats eventually. This is why your lighting must follow one rule: low signature, zero exposure. A tactical light isn't defined by brightness. It's defined by control. A small, dim, warm-tone light can keep you operational without turning your location into a target. Harsh white LEDs cut through the dark and broadcast your presence across hallways, courtyards, stairwells, and streets. A wandering beam tells others you have power. A steady beam tells them you have more. Both outcomes pull you into someone else's survival strategy. You need a compact light source with adjustable output, preferably with a red or amber mode. Red light protects your night vision, reduces spill, and minimizes external detection. You can move, search, eat, repair, or navigate without leaking your presence. Keep the beam tight. Keep it low. Keep it directed toward the ground or cupped in your hand. Think of it as a controlled leak of information, because that's exactly what it is. Your flashlight should be silent, reliable, and resistant to weather. It must survive drops, moisture, and long idle periods. Always carry spare batteries stored separately, insulated from heat and humidity. Test them, but never flaunt them. In a power outage, batteries become currency. Inside your home, blackout discipline is non-negotiable. Cover windows with blankets or blackout fabric. Kill all light leaks. A faint glow escaping through a curtain is enough to signal life, preparedness, and resources. That is all a desperate person needs to justify approaching your door. Light doesn't just illuminate your environment. It broadcasts your advantage. When the city goes dark, remain dark with it. Your goal is to see without being seen, operate without being noticed, and move without leaving a trail of illumination behind you. The lights you choose and how you use them determine whether you stay hidden or become a beacon in a predatory night. Water is the first resource to vanish in an urban blackout, not because it disappears, but because the system that delivers it dies. Electric pumps stop. Pressure drops. Faucets cough air. Within hours, every person in your building begins competing for what's left in their pipes, bottles, and storage. And competition is the last thing you want to be part of. Your objective is simple: secure water early, store it silently, and filter it without drawing attention. Noise, visibility, and movement are liabilities. When people realize water is limited, the search becomes aggressive. You need two components: stored water and a low-profile filtration method. Stored water buys you time. Filtration ensures longevity. Never rely on a single source. A minimum of 3 liters per person per day keeps you functional, not comfortable. But comfort isn't the mission. Functionality is. Use containers that don't crinkle, crack, or make noise when moved. Transparent jugs are not ideal. They reveal quantity to anyone who sees them. Opaque containers protect information, your most valuable asset. Fill them as soon as the power fails, before the crowd shifts from curious to alert. Once people notice others stockpiling water, suspicion spreads, and suspicion leads to confrontation. Filtration must be manual, quiet, and simple. No electric purifiers, no bulky systems that attract questions. A compact gravity-fed filter or a portable hand filter keeps you operational without signaling preparedness. These tools turn questionable sources, rainwater, melted ice, leftover water in building systems, into safe hydration. Never collect water publicly. Never filter water where others can observe. OPSEC is survival. Boiling is an option, but boiling creates two problems: heat and smell. Both reveal activity. Use it only when necessary, and only with absolute light discipline. Guard your water as if it were currency, because in a blackout, it is. People can survive without power. They cannot survive without hydration. When they panic, they look for those who planned ahead. Your goal is not just to have water. Your goal is to ensure no one knows you do. Quiet storage, quiet filtration, zero signatures. Water sustains your body, but secrecy protects your life. Power is leverage during a blackout, but only if it doesn't expose you. The mistake most people make is chasing high-output electronics that scream preparedness. Large generators, bright solar panels, loud charging devices, these tools create noise, attention, and jealousy. In a 72-hour urban collapse, attention is the enemy. Your energy sources must be silent, subtle, and deliberately limited. You don't need full power. You need controlled power. Your priority is to keep only essential devices alive. Your flashlight, your radio, and one communication device kept strictly powered off until needed. A high-capacity power bank, durable, compact, and dark-colored, is your foundation. Avoid units with unnecessary LEDs or flashy displays. You want power, not advertising. A 20,000, 30,000 mAh bank buys you operational time without depending on the grid. Next is redundancy. A hand crank charger or a compact solar panel becomes your silent fallback. Solar panels must be discreet. No positioning in open windows, no displaying them on balconies. Use them during daylight hours when most neighbors are indoors or inactive. The objective is not to show that you have power. The objective is to generate power without being observed. Hand crank systems solve the visibility problem entirely, but they introduce noise. That means you use them with precision. Short bursts, behind closed doors, at hours when ambient noise, wind, traffic, distant voices covers you. Every sound you produce carries information. Never forget that. Your device strategy is minimal. Keep phones off except for brief checks. Disable vibrations, notifications, and automatic brightness. Every flash of light is a signal. Every notification sound is a reveal. You are maintaining survivability, not convenience. Treat every % of battery as a resource that must be invested, not spent. Remember this rule: energy is not about what you can power. It's about what you can protect. If others learn you have a charging capability, you become a solution to their problem. And that makes you a target. Manage your energy like a covert operation. Quiet tools. Quiet use. Zero exposure. Controlled power keeps you functional in the dark. But invisible power keeps you alive. When the grid collapses, information becomes as critical as water. Not because you need entertainment, but because you need orientation. You must know what's happening outside your walls without exposing yourself to unnecessary movement. In a blackout, rumor spreads faster than truth, panic spreads faster than order, and people make dangerous decisions based on bad information. Your survival depends on filtering the noise, and you can't rely on digital systems that die the moment the power does. That's why you need an analog receiver. A simple battery-powered radio. No apps, no screens. No dependency on networks that vanish when the power fails. While the city drowns in uncertainty, radio waves continue to move through the air, carrying the only reliable updates you'll have access to. Emergency broadcasts, government advisories, local disturbances, weather alerts. None of these require the internet. They only require a device that doesn't depend on the grid. Digital signals fail in several ways during a blackout. Telecommunications overload. Networks collapse from demand. Cell towers have limited backup power. Even if your phone has battery left, the infrastructure it needs is already choking. That's why you must preserve your phone for emergencies only and treat your radio as your primary intel source. Choose a radio with manual tuning and multiple bands. AM for long-range news. FM for local updates. Shortwave if available, giving you insight beyond your immediate area. This information helps you decide whether to stay put, move, or prepare for additional threats. Information is the difference between strategic positioning and blind reaction. Keep the radio volume low, barely above a whisper. Sound travels farther in a powerless city where ambient noise disappears. A loud broadcast tells others you have working equipment, and equipment means resources. Never move around your home with the radio on. Keep it in one secure location and monitor at scheduled intervals. The true purpose of an analog radio isn't entertainment. It's alignment. It keeps you ahead of the panic curve. When others operate on rumors, you operate on data. And in a collapsing urban environment, data is a weapon. Know what's coming. Know what's real. And know it without being seen. Food isn't your priority in a 72-hour blackout. Heat is. But heat is dangerous, not because it burns, but because it reveals. When the city goes dark and cold meals become the new normal, the smell of cooked food travels farther than you think. It cuts through hallways, stairwells, and open windows like a flare in the night. And in a desperate environment, smell is a signal. Signals attract attention. Attention attracts problems. This is why your cooking system must operate on one principle: produce heat, release nothing. A no-smoke, no-smell cooking setup keeps you alive without broadcasting the fact that you still have resources. Solid fuel stoves, alcohol stoves with clean combustion, or compact flameless ration heaters create controlled heat without smoke trails. Their primary advantage is stealth, heat you can use, without signatures that betray you. Open flames are a liability. They produce odor, flicker, and shadows that leak through windows and vents. Even a small candle flame reflected on a wall can expose your position in a dark building. Use enclosed systems with minimal light output. Always prepare food near the center of your room, away from windows, and with blackout coverings in place. Think of your cooking area as a sealed operation zone, controlled, contained, invisible. Meal strategy must be simplified. You're not cooking for comfort, you're cooking for function. Choose foods that require minimal heat. Instant meals, dehydrated rations, canned goods that warm quickly, not meals that need extended boiling or frying. The longer the cook time, the longer the exposure window. Heat discipline is mandatory. Limit cooking to one predictable time period, ideally during natural ambient noise, rain, distant traffic, or when neighbors are occupied. Avoid nighttime cooking entirely. The contrast between darkness and activity is too sharp, and someone will notice. Remember, hunger makes people observant, smell makes them curious, and curiosity becomes intrusion when resources are scarce. Your goal is to feed yourself without feeding information to anyone else. Silent heat, minimal odor, zero light. A meal that keeps you functional without announcing that you can still eat. This is not about comfort. This is about survival without signatures. In a blackout, injuries don't happen because of dramatic events. They happen because the environment changes faster than people adapt. Stairwells go dark, glass breaks, tempers rise, doors jam. Simple accidents turn into major problems when medical support collapses. Hospitals overload within hours, and moving through the city becomes a risk you cannot justify. That leaves only one option. You handle the first layer of medical care yourself, quietly, efficiently, and without dependence on outside help. A personal medical kit isn't optional, it's mandatory. Not a bulky, tactical display of gear, but a compact system built for treating the small injuries that become life-threatening in a compromised environment. Cuts, burns, infections, sprains. These are the invisible enemies of urban survival. Without treatment, they slow you down, broadcast weakness, and force you into unnecessary exposure seeking help. Your kit needs precision tools, adhesive bandages, sterile gauze, alcohol wipes, medical tape, tweezers, a small antiseptic bottle, pain relievers, and basic burn care. Nothing you don't know how to use, nothing that requires power, nothing that creates noise. Every item should fit into a pouch you can access in the dark. Every movement should be practiced, not improvised. Light discipline applies even in medical treatment. A single bright flash while cleaning a wound is enough to reveal activity through a window or under a doorway. Use red light modes or tightly shielded beams. Work close to the ground, away from lines of sight. Keep all supplies organized, sealed, and protected from moisture. Infection is your real opponent. Dirt, broken skin, stagnant air, these conditions multiply bacteria fast. Treat wounds immediately, even if they seem minor. A small cut ignored for 48 hours in a dirty environment becomes a threat far more serious than the injury itself. You're not trying to perform advanced medicine. You're preserving mobility, capability, and autonomy. The moment you need outside help, you lose control. A medical kit keeps you self-contained, and self-contained is the only safe state in a failing city. Handle injuries early. Handle them quietly. Handle them yourself. When the grid goes down, doors become the new front line. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies, just your door, the one separating your controlled environment from the uncertainty outside. In normal life, doors are symbolic. In a blackout, they become structural. They decide whether someone enters or stays out. And when people get desperate, they don't knock. They test. They push. They pry. Your job is to ensure that every attempt ends at the threshold. Urban homes aren't built for defense. They're built for convenience and aesthetics. Thin frames, weak hinges, hollow cores, decorative locks that fail under pressure. When the power dies and security systems go offline, every flaw becomes a vulnerability. You must compensate with simple, quiet tools that reinforce the entry points without drawing attention. Your defensive kit begins with mechanical strength. A door brace, a portable barricade bar, or a wedge system that anchors your door against forced entry. These tools don't rely on electricity, and they don't announce themselves. They transform a standard door into a barrier that absorbs impact instead of surrendering to it. Install them silently, preferably during daylight, when ambient noise masks your activity. Next are your tools for structural reinforcement. A screwdriver, a multi-tool, and several long wood screws can tighten loose hinges and strengthen strike plates. Most doors fail not because the door breaks, but because the frame does. Reinforcing the strike area with longer screws distributes force into the wall instead of the thin door jamb. It's a small adjustment that multiplies resistance. Windows are another point of failure. Blackout coverings prevent light leakage, but they also prevent visual scouting. Add tension rods or makeshift barriers behind them, not to stop someone determined, but to slow them. Delay is your ally. Every second you create is a second that pushes a threat toward reconsideration. Never broadcast that you've reinforced your home. No loud drilling, no obvious changes. Security is strongest when it looks non-existent. You want your door to appear as weak as everyone else's, until someone tries it. A fortified entry buys you time, silence, and control. It keeps problems outside and options inside. In a powerless city, that boundary is everything. When the power grid collapses, the digital economy dies with it. Cards stop working. ATMs become dead machines. Payment apps turn into useless icons on a powerless screen. The system that made transactions effortless evaporates in seconds, and what remains is the oldest form of exchange humanity knows: physical currency. Not the large bills people hoard for savings, small denominations. The kind that keeps you moving when everyone else is stuck. Cash becomes influence because scarcity reshapes value. A bottle of water, a packet of batteries, a ride across town. None of these require a bank when the network is gone. They require trust, and in a blackout, trust is transactional. You offer something real in exchange for something real. Small bills make these exchanges smooth. Large bills create suspicion, conflict, and refusal. No one wants to give up critical supplies for money they can't break. You need a concealed stash of low-denomination cash secured in waterproof bags, split into multiple locations in your home. This isn't money for spending freely. This is money for solving problems without drawing attention. A few ones, a few fives, a few tens. Enough to navigate emergencies, but never enough to tempt someone into questioning what else you might have. Cash is also a psychological tool. When people panic, they cling to familiar systems. They believe money still holds power, even as the infrastructure that supports it collapses. You can use that belief to close small gaps, acquire supplies, secure transportation, negotiate assistance, without revealing your true capabilities or resources. Never flash cash. Never negotiate loudly. Never carry it in easily accessible pockets. Keep it flat, silent, and close to your body. In a world without electricity, the only currency more valuable than cash is discretion. Small bills don't just buy goods. They buy time, distance, and compliance. They reduce friction in situations where friction turns dangerous. They keep you fluid in a rigid, failing system. When the lights go out, digital wealth becomes fiction. But cash, small, simple, silent, remains real. A 72-hour blackout doesn't care about your comfort. It cares about your systems. Anyone can survive the first few hours on luck and hope. But after that, only the prepared maintain control. Your final objective is to merge all 8 items into a single operational kit. A silent, efficient, low-signature system that keeps you functional while the city loses its structure. This kit must be compact enough to move with, concealed enough to avoid attention, and organized enough that you can access any item in total darkness. You're not building a bug-out bag. You're building a containment unit for stability. Your personal command center when the world around you flickers into chaos. Start with the core. Water, light, and power. These give you physical capability. Store water in opaque containers and position them low, behind furniture or in dark corners. Keep your tactical light and spare batteries together, always in the same pocket, always reachable with one hand. Your power bank stays off until needed, wrapped in cloth to prevent accidental light leaks. Next comes intelligence and heat. Your analog radio should have its own protected zone. Away from metal clutter, easy to grab, impossible to confuse with anything else. Your no-smoke cooking system pairs with a small pouch of fast prep food. These items must stay layered, fuel separate from stove separate from food. This prevents noise, clutter, and hesitation, then structure and protection. Your medical kit stays near the center of the pack. Lightweight, sealed, silent. Your reinforcement tools belong on the outer side, where you can reach them fast if a door or window becomes a pressure point. Screws, wedges, and braces must be pre-sorted. You never want to dig for them when stress spikes. Finally, your small denomination cache. Never on top, never loose. Store it in flat stacks, sealed, moisture-proof, between 2 layers of soft fabric. Cache is not for daily use. It's for negotiating crucial gaps when nothing else works. When assembled correctly, your kit becomes more than equipment. It becomes a buffer between you and the desperation outside. A system that keeps you quiet, invisible, and fully functional while others panic. This is the final rule. Preparation is not gear. Preparation is organization, discipline, and silence. Your kit must reflect all 3. When the city goes dark, let your systems carry you, while you carry nothing unnecessary.